The Comfortably Zoned Radio Network proudly presents Charlie Vascellaro's Baseball Emporium.
And hello, and good morning, or good evening, or good afternoon. You never know what time anyone is listening. But this is Charlie Vascellaro from the Charlie Vascellaro's Baseball Emporium show on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And I've got a couple of esteemed guests and colleagues and friends with me today, calling in from San Francisco Bay Area is Ralph Tyko, a person of interest who is a friend of mine and the creator of this network as well. Hi, Ralph. How are you?
Hey, nice to talk to you, Charlie. It's an honor to be in your presence.
Well, I appreciate that. And now I'll introduce you and anybody else out there to my good pal, Gabe Schecter. Gabe is a writer, researcher, historian, editor, and a friend of mine in Cooperstown, New York, who tends to Emmett Ashford's grave and memorial for me while I'm not in town. And I'm eternally grateful to you for that, Gabe. How are you this morning?
I'm happy to join you on that, on this talk and on the Emmett Ashford stewardship. I'm cold. It's snowy here in the Cooperstown area, but I'm fine.
Yeah, we've got a little chill up in here, down here in Baltimore, and I'm pouring another cup of coffee right this minute. This is going to be my third one. Usually I have two, but since we're going to be on the show, I thought I'd tank up a little bit.
You're going to need it to keep up with us, Charlie.
There you go. So there have been a lot to talk about in baseball in this past week, and I would say that as we draw closer to spring training, just a few days now until pitchers and catchers and myself report to spring training, but the hot stove league season seems to be heating up in these final days with big, interesting, and controversial topics. And I think I want to talk about the first one. Let's start with the proposed extra inning rule, the idea of putting a runner on second base to start the inning. Let's start with you, Ralph.
I looked at that article, and I really, my heart sunk because it's just another bastardization of statistics. If you put a runner on second, where does he come from? Is he the next batter up in the order? Is he a designated runner? If he's knocked in, does the run go on his personal statistic tally on his baseball card for runs? Does he get 23 runs instead of 22 coming off the bench? Just that alone, and I think PEDs, the DH has done that, and this is a continuation of that. Is the RBI a legitimate RBI? Because, I mean, he had a runner on. It was going to be automatic. This is horrible. How much, if you want to save some time, speed up the pitcher.
Oh, yeah.
I understand. This is craziness. And if you don't want to go out to the ballpark and sit there, and the beauty is that the game ends when the game ends, are we that in control? I mean, this is craziness. It's heartbreaking, really, to be honest with you.
I find the
shit. Go ahead.
It's an out of this world proposal. It comes from out of where. The first thing I thought of was, whose brilliant idea was this? And you talk about how to. Yes.
I think the genesis of the idea came when Bud Selig watched his All-Star game managers run out of pitchers, and thought, oh my goodness, with managers using 7 relievers before the 9th inning, we can't expose them to endless innings. I agree with Ralph.
Let's make the All-Star game a real game that counts in the sense. With that in mind, he came right off of that, running out of pitchers, to make it a real game. That's the guy that you're listening to a generation later to lead the game back to whatever it is that needs.
Yeah, one time in the history of baseball did that happen at an All-Star game, and this was the response. It's not like this is a common occurrence.
My first thought when I heard about this was that somewhere Harvey Haddix is rolling over in his grave. How about this scenario? Haddix retires the first 27 hitters. They put a runner on second to start the 10th inning. First batter hits a ground ball to the right side, moves the runner over. Second guy hits a sacrifice fly. The game is over. Haddix is the losing pitcher without allowing a base runner.
That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. That's a nightmarish scenario.
Involved in that. Henry Aaron was on base and involved with that, if I'm not mistaken.
He was walked intentionally to set up a double play so they could pitch to Adcock. Yeah.
Right, and I think he was passed on the bases or something.
Right. The trailing runner, it was Aaron who just rounded second and headed home, and Adcock passed him, so he got credit for just a double. But what you brought up, Ralph, about designated runner, that occurred to me too. Well, suppose the game could still go 15 innings. I mean, if the teams match zeros or ones or whatever, do you start with that same guy at second base every inning?
Every time?
Are you skipping somebody in the order?
What if the designated runner has already been used in the game? If he's on the roster, I think you get a local derby jammer to come in there and knock the runner off second base, and then take him out.
Yeah, and how does this runner arrive at second base? Is he delivered by a helicopter with a parachute and then just lands on second base? I mean,
bring him in from the bullpen on a cart. This is not an original idea. This is not.
And what if you're scoring at home?
In the first 2 years of the New York Mets, my father had the same proposal to make it an even chance that the Mets would start every inning with a runner on second.
Yeah, I mean, It does remind you of one of those kind of makeshift rules that you might create in a Sandlot game, considering how many players you had available. That's where this seems to come from. A ghost runner.
Bury at first base, he picked off, and you could start all over again.
Baseball does seem to have an obsession with this idea of the time of game. Now, I do realize that game times have increased in recent years and decades, and I suppose to people, this is what I find fascinating about this. To people who don't like baseball, this would be one of the things they don't like, the pace of the game. But to people who do like baseball, it's the thing we love, the pace of the game. So who are they catering to with this move?
It's a matter of pace versus action. They could solve a lot of the time excess with a couple of rules about who can be on the mound. If a manager wants to make a pitching change, just have him step to the top of the dugout, say, up, so-and-so goes in. Forget all about this going out to the mound and dicking around for a minute and a half pretending you're not going to take the guy out. And limit the number of trips the catcher can make to the mound per inning.
Yeah, those are all very practical applications. Those are real practical applications that would be easily to effect. Yep.
Well, they've had the 30-second rule for pitchers. I think enforcing it would be a good start before you start bringing in other crazy rules. And, yeah. I also think that the DH should be used in the minors all the way through in every league, or it shouldn't be used in the minors all the way through. There are organizations that have an advantage based on the way things are in bringing players along. That's another rule change that should go into effect.
If the DH existed when Connie Mack first proposed it, Babe Ruth wouldn't have been Babe Ruth. He would have been Lefty Grove, because he never would have known he was a hitter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very good point. And yeah, if you project
so I get rid of
the
it.
difference that would have made for everybody. And good point to interject when anybody talks about who the greatest ball player was of all time. The man was a 20-game winner, for crying out loud, before he picked up a bat.
Arguably the best left-hander in the game at the time. And who knows, like what Gabe was saying, he could have ended up being the Lefty Grove instead of Babe Ruth, just because if he had stayed on that path, I don't think there's any doubt. We're looking at least a 300-game winner, and maybe more.
By the way, since Ralph brought up the best player ever, by coincidence, I was at the Hall of Fame Library the other day looking at the Sporting News microfilm from 1942 when the Sporting News conducted a poll of 100 ex-players, 102 to be exact. Who was the greatest player ever and why? Out of the 102 votes, Ty Cobb got 60. Hannes Wagner, 17, Ruth, 11. And various other guys got 1 or 2.
Whoa.
Well, I suppose that is a testament to what abilities the players of the time valued above others, and perhaps Cobb's overall athleticism and fiery brand of play. He was I would say arguably what we would call a 5-tool player today. Whereas I don't know if you would have considered Ruth one, even though Ruth comes close.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he did.
They included some of the comments about why, and in the comments on Ruth, nobody mentioned his pitching, which I found odd, and it's what today I think would set him above the pack as an all-rounder.
And I'm going to say this to Ralph about Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb did have power. He didn't exercise it in the same way that Ruth did, and it was actually a tremendous bone of contention between the two of them, and it was Cobb's greatest criticism of Ruth was this silly, big swinging for home runs all the time. Don't you want to get on base? Look how often he strikes out. This was the way Cobb viewed what Ruth did.
Yeah.
And
that's why Ruth never hit. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And he did drive a lot of balls into the gaps. I mean, that was kind of Cobb was a strong man with power.
Yeah, that's why Ruth never batted higher than 393.
Well, there's no, in my opinion, there's no arguing against Babe Ruth as the greatest player. I'm just giving you Cobb's argument.
No, I know, and in the sense that if you take power out of the equation, there's no. If you take pure power, no one had that power, so these guys couldn't even imagine having it. If you take that out of the equation, Cobb was the greatest from that standpoint. And if you could compare generations like we used to do as kids, that's been taken away from us with the PED thing. Howard Bonds rate, because we watched him. There were 5 years there. He was just locked in. I don't think this guy made it out in 5 years.
I was living in the Bay Area then, in the late 90s through 2001, and he seemed to me the closest thing to Ted Williams. He would not swing at a pitch out of the strike zone, and if it was in the strike zone, he hammered it. Even his outside.
Yeah, I would say the most disciplined batter I've ever seen. I'm not old enough to have seen Ted Williams, but I think it's easy to say that Barry Bonds is the most disciplined hitter I've ever seen. He had one particular location that he was looking for the ball in. Little bit inside, a little bit higher, about belt high, a little inside, something he could turn on. And if he didn't see that pitch, he just didn't swing. When he saw that pitch, he crushed it.
Right. And if you guys will remember, he had a piece of armor on his elbow that almost he could dig in where other guys couldn't, because fear of being brushed back, hit, this, that, and the other thing. He played up the situation in every way. They didn't have that kind of armor gear.
That's the most valuable piece of equipment I've ever seen employed.
Right, and nobody talks about that, and nobody factors that in.
You're right.
He would not take a walk. He would not. He'd rather take a walk. Unbelievable.
And he had Jeff
Which he did
behind him for many of those years, so he could afford to take a walk. I wanted to note something, Ralph. I was out there and watched him play almost every game when he was in his mid-30s. You've seen him more. I always felt the most visible effect of steroids on his game was when he played the field. He lost his speed in the field, and in particular lost the ability to bend over and field a ball on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if you noticed that.
I think he lost a great deal of his personality as well. And I'm not even joking.
Well, that was a shorter trip than his baseball talent.
Right. No, steroids affects people personality-wise in a much different way than other, speed or this, that, and the other thing. Although speed doesn't do you well either. So, how do you guys feel about speed, greenies being a PED back in the 80s?
Well, they were, they were a PED. I think that it was a sign of the times in a lot of societal ways as well, not just baseball. This was an age of excess that we're talking about here, where guys were really partying it up at night.
It wasn't with speed; it was with coke.
The speed in the game was what got them back into playing shape the next day when they were all banged up from the previous night out. And I think this is where
using. I'm sorry. Go.
Yeah, I think this is what owes to the prevalence of that of those type of drugs, was that the guys were out all night, and this was their response to being out all night.
Taking Jim Bouton's discussion of it in Ball 4 as good evidence, I wouldn't call it a performance-enhancing drug so much as a performance-enabling drug.
Yeah, there you go.
The same way that college students would use speed to stay up all night to study or write a paper, and they could get through it, but that didn't mean it was going to be any good.
The same way I'm having my third cup of coffee just so I can host this show today.
There you go.
Willie had. Let me just get this in, and then I'll laugh at that because that's pretty cute. Willie Mays had what he called his red juice. And that was some sort of a concoction of stimulants to get him through the long summer. So it's been going on for a long time.
Which was revealed by John Milner, was the one who revealed that to us in Pittsburgh during the infamous Pittsburgh cocaine trials, when many of the Pirates were brought in and some of the Kansas City Royals were brought in. I think there was a few St. Louis Cardinals in there too. And Milner, in his testimony, made an analogy to the red juice, and was also, just describing. He was giving a little picture, a window into the life of the ball player and what was going on in the clubhouse. And I even think that there was some encouragement and peer pressure by players who were using things like this to encourage other guys to have a little and let's all be up for this game, everybody. Have a little drink of my juice over there and go out there and do your job. I think that was part of the clubhouse culture that was.
About that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Dale Berra gave a ringing endorsement to it.
Yeah, and there was other team leaders and guys who were the elder statesmen on their clubs who sometimes led by example and did this for to show they were, fighting for the team kind of thing.
Well, I just wanted to make a statement that whatever it is, if it's a performance enhancing, enabling, it doesn't change the chemical makeup of your body like steroids did.
No.
So I don't think it can be lightly compared, and you could say that every generation has their way of getting through it, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
Can't be lightly compared. Steroids are steroids. Does it negate their, should they be in the Hall of Fame? Guys like Clemens and Bonds and I think they should. You should compare. You should put a little asterisk. Their stats are on their plaque. Their stats
I think that at this point the water is so muddy that you can't draw distinctions about who should and shouldn't be anymore. And I think that you kind of just lay the evidence out there, the numbers, if you will, and the voters are still going to have their own opinions about these things. There's nothing that says you can't just say, well, this is how we feel, and that automatically throws you in. There's a lot of intangibles, but I do think there's a trend towards acceptance, which we're seeing in the recent election. Yep, and the idea. One of the things what bothers me, and I see these guys. We may have even spoken about this before, Ralph. I can't remember, but I know I've talked about it. When you saw the roundtable sessions with reporters about who they were going to vote for on the MLB channel before the election was announced, and giving their reasoning and rationale. The ones that bothered me the most were the guys who said, well, I'm going to vote for this guy even if he's a very suspect character. If it looks very obvious that he was on this, I'm still going to vote for him because he didn't fail a drug test. And so now you're being the judge there, deciding who's in and who's out, even if their behavior is the same. And so I thought
somebody in between like Mike Piazza, who was accused by a reporter because he had acne, he had back acne, so they put two and two together. Naturally, having back acne makes you automatically a steroid user, and naturally not having back acne makes you a non-steroid user. In people's minds and the way they think. Literally a superficial judgment. Hell for years over that, and there was no proof. Yeah. There were no failed drug tests. The union got to cover up all the drug tests. They didn't fail at all. Remember when the union that business of
I would say the regular
players. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I guess the regular criteria for election induction of the hall remain the same in a lot of ways. I think if you have different rules for different guys, it just doesn't work. So I think that yeah, go ahead.
I want to make a couple of points. As Bonds proved, the bottom line is you still have to hit the ball. It's still the most difficult thing to do in sports, especially if the pitchers are juiced up too. You still have to hit the ball hard, and you have to give him credit for that.
No question. But it does help.
And the discipline. Yeah.
It helps you come back the next day to play, to recover from nagging injuries, this, that, and the other thing. But also, like with McGuire, he recovered from injuries, bulked up, and his tendons in his feet broke down because it couldn't hold. Your body can't, tendons and ligaments don't get stronger. Muscles get bigger. So in the same way it helped him, it hurt him. And McGuire shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, steroids or no steroids. His numbers don't hold.
Yeah, he's a borderline guy at best, I think. Yeah.
I agree with you completely. I see him as a latter-day Harmon Killebrew.
And not even quite as good.
No, I see him as
one
the
thing he
Dave.
excelled at is dubious. There's nothing left.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, when we started this conversation, we were talking about the experiment out at second base, and look where it led us. So I'm gonna bring in another
get on the subject
topic.
of travesties. Bill Dean, an historian I respect quite a bit, says that even before this year there were 15 steroid users elected to the Hall of Fame.
I think that sounds about right. Yeah, I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
We've had these conversations before, Gabe, you and I as well, where we've rolled through the suspects. And, it's not that hard to imagine, especially now we're in the year 2017.
Is Nolan Ryan up on your list as suspects when
Yes.
you guys talk? He is.
He's on Bill's
Yes.
list, yes.
He's on mine, too.
As
And by association, this was a Texas Rangers team where there was a lot of prevalent use during that era. The Canseco and Palmero and the different guys that have admitted to it or got caught during that time were sharing a clubhouse with Ryan at the time. I think that some of what he was doing seemed kind of superhuman to me, even his physical makeup, whereas with Bonds, the muscles were located in his upper body, forearms, chest. With Ryan, from his legs, they looked to me
Charlie,
inordinately large.
I don't know if I've shared this with you, but this is a great segue to the other subject you want to talk about. My belief is that the first major leaguer who bulked up through use of steroids was Pete Rose, who gained about 60 pounds over the course of the middle of his career, and hung out at Gold's Gym in the early days when they were pioneering steroids. So he's my candidate.
That is a very interesting theory.
Yeah, he did. He was early involved with the weights. It's funny, the weights. I was thinking about the weights yesterday because I saw a commercial for the beginning of the season.
That didn't happen, though. Never.
Well, but the idea of the weight training in baseball, which still goes on and is still tied to that steroid culture. So I don't know that you're ever going to break those two things apart from each other. The weight training and the steroids, they go together like milk and cookies. And I still see the commercials for this before the season starts, all these guys pumping iron. And it seems so far away from where the game once was physically and the way players used to train and how they used to look. Almost all of these guys look like bodybuilders now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, even Jim Thome was pretty thin when he came up. Just to throw a name out in the ether.
Oh, sure.
And you have to give the chemists a lot of credit in being able to hide all this. So to make it make the theory feasible that these guys can be tested, this, that, and the other thing. But private chemists are always going to be one step ahead. There's this much money involved when a player can pay somebody $1 million, say, they're making 7, 8, 10 on the, pay pay some geek $1 million, he'll come up with anything at that rate. So
I don't know that we're ever going to be fully out of the woods, really. I just don't think so.
Boy, your theory about Rose, I have to ingest that and think about it for a long time. But that makes an awful lot of sense. And you also have to remember that in the early 50s, what was it, the German women's track team? They had steroids going, and these people associated with each other athletically and what have you. We don't know what went on. We don't know what went on without players' consent.
Right. I mean, poor Barry Bonds, they put stuff in him, and he didn't even know what it was.
Had no idea. Clear, what is this stuff? He brought his kid. Do you remember, you lived out here, the Giants have an announcing team that is incredibly great.
They're the best on TV.
They are absolutely Kruk and Kipe and John Miller and
Lon Simmons.
Oh man, rest in peace. Lon was just unbelievable. He had the pipes.
The post game show on radio was as good as the game.
No question. But those two announcers, Kruk and Kipe, became and are, because of their incredible popularity, well-deserved, they became folks that are well-trusted. And Bonds goes out there when he was accused, and he goes on the Kruk and Kipe show, and he brings out his kid, like a 12, 13-year-old kid, and puts his arm around the kid and proceeds to deny knowing what was going on in his body, what was being put into his body, with his arm around his kid. Now, I'll tell you what, you don't become a world-class athlete without knowing every little drink of water, where it was prepared, what lake it came from, that you ingested in your body, because your body is your van,
your temple,
your work van. It's everything.
Your personal trainer knows better than you do,
right? And you can't tell me that the cover-up didn't go from minor league trainers. Minor league clubhouse guys were knowing what was going on, and it was a big old cover-up. And you put Selig in the Hall of Fame and not Bonds.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you don't put Miller in the Hall of Fame.
Don't get me started, Ralph. Yeah.
Right.
An amazing travesty. Bowie Q.
And
Bowie
we
Q.
also cite it's a museum, for Christ's sake. It's supposed to be open to display everybody who played the game. You want to say that Willie McCovey and Duke Snider weren't convicted felons for evading income tax when they were taking money at card shows? Bless their hearts. They were McCovey was pardoned by Obama, and the Duke doesn't need any pardoning at this point.
Yeah.
But my point is, we're all gray. None of us are black or white. We're not talking about color. We're talking about things we do, how we are as human beings. You want to get somebody perfect and put them in the Hall of Fame? You wouldn't be playing baseball if you were perfect in the first place.
Yeah, if the Hall of Fame plaque gallery consisted only of exemplary human beings, there'd be maybe 20 or 30 people in it.
Right.
And I'm being generous.
And they'd be
I thought they were in such a hurry to put Selig in this year. I didn't understand what the rush was. He was 1 year removed and immediately landed on this committee ballot where there was no time, like the usual 5 years for a player to assess Selig's tenure. I don't think that it never even seemed to come up. The topic of him as being inducted into the Hall of Fame, the topic never came up until he was already in. There was never any discussion about this. It was, and it seemed like it was being done for some kind of reason. And it just smelled suspicious.
Just raise the money. He made millions of bucks for the owners, and
you've answered your own question.
The players, let's put it that way. And in the same way that Betty DeVos was approved, what were her qualifications? She gave money. So money is pretty much like my good friend Wayne Unger always says, follow the money. Whatever.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to kind of segue into another topic of discussion that we were bringing up before, which is completely relative to following the money, is the commissioner's new stance that they want to re-examine. This is a quote from the commissioner, Rob Manfred. they want to re-examine baseball's stance on gambling. Those are the exact words he said.
Can I lead off on this one?
Please, Gabe.
Major League Baseball's stance on gambling has been hypocritical for a long, long time. When the new ballpark opened in Arizona, first game of the franchise, the biggest advertising space on their big scoreboard was taken up by the Las Vegas Convention Authority, and casinos. There are on TV telecasts and the advertising band they put along the base of the stands behind the plate. The ads for casinos are all over the place. When I went to Montreal late in their tenure there was one billboard on the whole outfield fence. It was for a casino. So that the money talks. It's a revenue stream, and if MLB can get their piece of it, that's all they care about.
Well, it's blatant and obvious, yes. But this idea that baseball wants to have its cake and eat it too, with regards to rules concerning gambling, among players on teams, and MLB employees are not supposed to be involved with this. And now they want to bring in the element of fantasy baseball and gambling, which is just so ripe for corruption. The idea, and here we are 2 years away from the 100th anniversary of the Black Sox scandal, and we're going to create a situation where it could happen again.
Gentlemen,
exactly.
I think this also greases the way for, in case the A's don't get their stadium built, it greases the way for them to go to Vegas, because that's always been a bone of contention about putting a team there. Yet,
in the casinos there, betting is not allowed on any event that takes place involving a Nevada team or in a Nevada venue. That's the state of Nevada Gaming Commission.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how that would be affected. Can I tell you guys a story? I lived in Las Vegas from 1980 to 1995, and I did my fair share of baseball betting. Not quite as much as the NFL, which wouldn't exist without betting. It's always been a huge part of baseball fandom. One time in 1985, I went to the Stardust sports book to watch two games. There were two great pitching matchups, and the four pitchers were Valenzuela, Ryan, Mario Soto, and I think Gooden, but I'm not sure of the fourth. Anyway, so I could watch them on adjacent screens, and through 5 innings, there were 3 hits total in the 2 games. It was beautiful. Oh. And a poker player I knew, I had dealt at the World Series of Poker, and a very successful player named David Chu won a ton of money at poker and blew it all on sports betting. He saw me, he sat down next to me, and we started talking. And after a while, he said, "Who do you have tonight?" And I said, "I don't have anybody. I just came here to watch these 2 games." I wish you could see the look he gave me. It resembled the look a lot of us had on election night. Like, are you? What planet are you? What? Huh? He was incredible.
Hey, when you dealt the World Series of Poker,
he didn't even want to sit with me anymore.
I have to interject. You dealt the World Series of Poker. Did you deal to Stanley Weiss? Do you remember Stanley Weiss?
Stanley Weiss. Not by name. I dealt in the 80s and early 90s.
And he was a kid that I grew up with in Jackson Heights who was a gambler from the very beginning as kids. He took more of my baseball cards than anybody else. And you mentioned that. I had to throw it in. Wow. What an experience that had to be for you. You're kind of we're meeting for the first time. You're kind of a Renaissance man like Sam, aren't you?
That's a nice thought. Thank you.
Yeah. You guys are very, very interesting. You do a lot of interesting things. Where do you write, and what? I'm just trying to interject that, get to know you a little bit, and
I'm one of the columnists at a site called the NationalPastimeMuseum.com, which has a great roster of writers: Marty Appel, Paul Dixon, Rob Nyer, Mark Armour, a lot of real good people. So I have a lot of stuff there. And a few books
see
out.
Rob Nyer, thank him for a great book in the baseball lineups that he wrote. That's one of those. Sam and I were talking last week that we have certain books that are right always at the tip of our fingers. Crossing the Line is one of those that Sam and I talked about, and that's one where you. The Trade Book by Reichler is another one.
Oh, yeah.
You got to have it right there every day of your life, because you never know.
Oh, you know what? I got to throw one in here, guys. I got to throw in the Great Baseball Card Flipping, Trading, and Collecting book, which, Ralph, this is relative to your time with Cy Berger and Topps. It's basically a crazy, rambling, joyous ride through the baseball card industry, and it uses obscure players, funny pictures. It's pure comedy and stream of consciousness, and I feel like taking it with me everywhere I go.
It came out in the 70s, and it was the first real introduction to nostalgia. You know, baseball collectibles, cards, where people were starting to think back in the early 70s. They were starting to think back to when they grew up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it was a very, very poignant book in our history. For me, it was everything. I read the preface by Cy Berger, who was the baseball guy, the baseball card guy back then. And as I mentioned last week to Sam, I realized Topps was not just looking for baseball scouts to sign minor league players. I was a salesman and had some communication skills, and wrote Cy Berger a letter asking for a job. And he gave me a summer gig that lasted 15 years of going around to the different minor leagues on the West Coast, the Northwest League, California League. I worked the Midwest League a year or two as well. And just drive around. They paid me a per diem. And,
talking about the history of the game, or viewing the history of the game through baseball cards, is such a it provides such a fantastic avenue to the game, and it taps into so many elements. And that book was, the copy that I got was given to me, I think, by Gabe or Tim, one of you guys at the hall. The pages are all broken apart. The binding is falling apart, but I stuff it back together all the time, and I put it in my luggage. And when it was passed on to me, I think Tim Wiles passed it on to me at the Hall of Fame. And Gabe worked for many years. You didn't mention this in your description before to Ralph, but Gabe worked for many years at the Hall of Fame as a researcher. And me as a visitor, I used to just kind of wander the halls and wander the library and show up in these guys' offices when I had a chance, and sit down and see what they were thinking about and working on. And I found this book that had been passed around from all of the staff in the library at the Hall of Fame. And by the time it got into my hands, Tim, when he handed it, told me that they only referred to it as the book. it was called The Book instead of its big, long title. And everybody knew what they were talking about. If you said, who's got the book now? Gabe has the book now. Oh, no, Tim has the book. Somebody gave the book to Charlie. So,
right. That's great.
I remember a picture of was it Don Mossy or Ray
Yes.
One of those two. They had his worst-looking card. Not a handsome man by trade.
Yeah.
But he was one of those that made me laugh in that book. Priceless.
Did you ever hear?
I believe the cut line for that card is the man who invented winning ugly.
If you remember Danny Napoleon, an early player for the Mets.
Sure.
You know the line.
No neck. He looked like No Neck Williams.
Yeah, but the devastating line was, I can't remember whether it was Kurt Flood or Lou Brock. I want to say Flood said he'd be ugly even if he was white.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we talked about this because I'm heading to Arizona on Monday for spring training, and I'm packing today and tomorrow. And now you guys have reminded me not to forget to bring the book.
Oh, absolutely.
As if you were going to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I always throw. Go ahead.
I just want to add Charles Einstein's book to that group of, along with Dynasty and Bums by Peter Hollenbach.
Yeah.
Those are books you just have to have with you at all times. Now, how has the Kindle affected your guys' reading? How do you...
I don't use it, so not at all.
Okay. Yeah, I do not have one either. I'm talking to you at my desk in Baltimore, and I'm surrounded by actual books. I do some reading on the computer, of course, but I'm holding a dog-eared version of the Iowa Baseball Confederacy in my hand by W.P. Kinsella, which I thought that this year's World Series drew crazy parallels and analogies to. It was as if the realm of the magical realism genre in this book of fiction had entered into the real world. Somehow there was a crossover and a crack in time, like the ones described in the book, seemed to actually be taking place during the World Series this year.
Sam, you mentioned something on Facebook that there is, if you want to be esoteric, had that rule change of putting somebody at second base been put in a couple of years ago, the World Series would have been changed.
So, let's go back to Game 7. And so Ben Zobrist led off the 10th inning with a double, the top of the 10th after the rain delay. And now let's the rain delay, which came right out of the Iowa Baseball Confederacy, by the way, which that game between the Cubs and the nine from Onomata, Iowa, from the town of Big Inning, Iowa, and with divine intervention by the great Indians chief in the sky. So, if you were wondering what was going on in the World Series, just get a copy of Kinsella's book and read it, and it'll help you understand this year's World Series. So when Zobrist got that double, here's the most exciting moment since Rajai Davis's homer a couple innings earlier. And this was a moment that it was a rallying cry for the Cubs. Got the team up on its feet in the dugout, and never would have happened if we had this new rule where they dropped Zobrist out of a helicopter with a parachute and he landed on second base.
Well, coming out in a parachute was the 86 World Series.
Yes, that's exactly the imagery that come into my head when I heard about this rule.
Yep. Yes. Oh, man.
Parachuted in, I don't remember.
Well, in the 1986 World Series, there was a fan who was flying over Shea Stadium. And again, now, it's funny, these intersections of the cosmos and the mystical universe and baseball, which seem to allow for them. Baseball seems to allow for this to happen, and you could imagine in this. Could you imagine in this day of heightened security, I would imagine this guy might have been shot out of the sky by a sniper if he attempted to do this net. Yeah, or a drone, yes. So what happened here was a television actor, a guy who was on soap operas as an extra, was dared by some friends of his to fly into the stadium before, it was either Game 6 or 7. I think it was Game 6. It might have been the magical Game 6.
Yeah, I think it was 6.
Yeah. So before the game, during the Star Spangled Banner and all of that, here comes a guy on a like a hang glider. It was like it looked like it had a motorcycle that he was sitting on, the kind of thing to get you up in the air first or something. And then he just flew down into the stadium.
Landed near the first base dugout, I think.
Yeah. There was people lined up on the field and stuff. There was the World Series pregame pageantry was going on while this guy decided to launch himself into the ballpark. And he had a Go Mets flag flying behind him, like a kite, and it said Go Mets or Let's Go Mets on him. And he was wearing a white parachute jumper suit. And he just kind of ran around on the field for a little bit, and the fans all gave him a rousing ovation. And you know what happened next? The ball goes through Bill Buckner's legs, and Mookie Wilson comes around to score. Not Mookie Wilson, but yeah, Ray Knight.
Ray Knight scored, yes.
Yeah. Mookie Wilson, hit the ball. But that was that same night, and that's the image I get when I think about this runner being brought into the game in that fashion, you know.
Baseball's a magical thing, and there's a lot of spirituality in baseball that unless you're one of the crazy like one of us three guys, a lot of people, it goes by them. This is a wonderful game, and I'll never get tired of talking about it, so I'm so happy you invited me.
Well,
I never get tired of watching it, although I have to say if they put that runner on second rule in, it would make you think twice.
Yeah, that's right. It'll make you think.
Such an aberration.
What am I doing? Why don't I just go back to my computer sim games and enjoy it?
I would hope that they're listening to all this opposition, because I would say from the second I saw this news posted, it was at least 90 to 99% opposed to it from everyone I've spoken with. So I can't imagine
I can imagine a baseball fan going, "Oh, that would be great," and then we'd go out. We'd beat the traffic home because, after all, we got to get home.
Yeah, I always thought the point of going to the game was,
if you wanted to get home.
I always thought the point of going to the ball game was going to the ball game so you could enjoy your time at the ballpark. I don't quite understand everyone's in being in such a hurry to get out. Now, I will say this: I like a 1-0, 1 hour and 59 game as much as the next guy for the purity of it. I do like to see a performance like that, and those are the games I remember of the ones that I've been to in person. The ones I always remember are those ones, even more than the big slugfest. I saw Gooden and Valenzuela go at each other out in L.A. in 1985, and they were just putting up zeros.
Wait a second. Was that the game that was 1-1, and the Dodgers loaded the bases on the bottom of the 8th with nobody out, and Gooden retired the side?
Strawberry ended the game. I don't know if it was 1-1. I think it was 0-0 at that point, because Strawberry ended the game with a double in the top of the. He didn't end it because it wasn't a walk-off, but he drove in the winning run. Maybe it was 1-1, because I think Strawberry pushed the other run across. It might have been a 1-1 tie into the 11th or 12th. And
I was at that game.
We were both there. We didn't know each other yet. But I will say this: Fernando. No, it was 0-0 because Fernando, I want to say, pitched 10 scoreless innings. Maybe he pitched 10 innings on one run, but I think it was. I know Fernando pitched 10 innings, and Gooden pitched 9, and the only guys that were hitting each other were Fernando and Gooden. They were getting, both of those guys were decent hitting pitchers, and in a game when nobody was scoring or not much offense was going on, I think Gooden had 2 hits off of Valenzuela, and Fernando had 1 or 2 off of Gooden. It was one of those kind of crazy games. But the whole thing.
The game you went to was September 6th, 1985. The Mets won it on the 13th, 2-0 on a 2-run double by Strawberry.
There it is. Yeah.
Valenzuela went 11. Gooden went 9. The game I went to was a different one.
Gabe, are you any relation to Leonard Schecter?
No, I'm not. He spelled it a little differently, but no.
Okay. Yes, he did. He spelled it without the C, if I'm not mistaken.
The game I went to was on June 4th that year. That was 1-1 to the 8th. The Dodgers loaded the bases in the bottom of the 8th with nobody out, and Gooden went strikeout, pop-up, strikeout.
Well, as you recall, Gooden, that was Gooden's Cy Young season. That was his greatest year, 1985. And
the Mets scored 3 runs in the top of the 9th, one of them on Gooden's third hit of the day. And he had 2 hits off Valenzuela in the later game. He
did win the Silver Slugger Award at the pitcher's spot that year as well. To see Dwight Gooden in those days was truly a thing of beauty and excitement.
Yeah.
Any ballpark he pitched in was full of electricity, and I was at the time 21 years old, living in Arizona, a little town, Fountain Hills near Scottsdale, and I would make trips to California to catch Dwight Gooden just about any time he showed up somewhere that year, whether it was San Diego or L.A. or San Francisco. I was chasing him around.
San Francisco in a night game in San Francisco where he was absolutely dominant.
I saw him strike out 15 batters in a game in San. That might have been that one because it was
September of '84.
That was the year before, huh? Okay, yeah. I mean, that was when he was the Rookie of the Year. He was Rookie of the Year in '84 and Cy Young Award winner in '85. And I mean, he was the show in baseball. He was I would call the premier marquee guy during those years. That's what you wanted to see.
Yeah, I hope he's handling his demons a little better these days. Would like to see him find some happiness and inner peace.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm never surprised every time I hear about it. Another relapse. Unfortunately, I do wish him the best. I do think he's a decent guy. I think he is, just like you say, haunted by demons. And
more than that, he's a really good guy. And
yeah.
In Ron Darling's book, he talked about the Mets back then having a different attitude toward Gooden and Strawberry, and they always felt very protective of Gooden because he was a young kid, a good guy, and just
relatively naive when he first arrived. Yeah.
Whereas Strawberry didn't get much sympathy for them.
No, Strawberry was kind of the opposite, and the fact that he's being a little holier than thou with his former teammate doesn't bother me.
It tells us a lot about him.
Yeah. What a dick. Oh.
I think that's a general consensus. I happen to be in.
I realize it's podcast radio, and if you have a feeling, go out with it.
Say it. I happened to be in Cooperstown when that story was breaking this year, when Strawberry came out and decided he was going to out Gooden about his behavior. And Gabe you were living in Cooperstown, Cherry Valley nearby at the same time, and I remember, when you're in Cooperstown during the summer, the baseball is on in the background everywhere you go. There's a TV somewhere with the news, and I had seen that story repeatedly the day before, and so had everybody else. And you're walking down Main Street, and you're walking past the memorabilia shops and the baseball card shops and the different guys that own the place, and there's a buzz about this. People are all talking about what they saw on the news last night together. And again, to a man, everybody on Main Street in Cooperstown thought that Strawberry was a dick for doing what he did. That was the attitude I got from everybody I talked to that day. Whether it was true or not, everybody just thought that's not something you're supposed to be doing in public to somebody like your friend, who is your friend, Dwight Gooden, and that was what everybody thought that day.
Isn't it amazing? We don't think of these players as we did. Their stats on the back of the baseball cards. The older we get, we start thinking of these players. Their looks, their personality, the way they were, the way they related, and that's more important than the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, that's what we were saying.
I've always felt my approach to writing about baseball has been as a sort of antidote to the ease with which we judge players by their numbers. Numbers always have a context. And what I try to do, I think of as rehumanizing them. The numbers dehumanizing them. When we look at them as men who are struggling at the most difficult of games, it's so short-sighted to look just at the numbers. We have to look at them as people.
And it's such an everyday way of life. To be a ball player is more than just to be playing the game. And I think that's because of the fact that you do it every day. It is different than the other sports in that way, where it's it is part, and it's woven into the fabric of the culture too, because we do it every day too. We're all of us along for the ride on that daily journey, which I'm very happy to say is about to begin again. I do, and we're now approaching the 1 hour mark on the program, and I'm going to ask if that's all right with us to call it a close to this program for today, and we can pick up where we were. And next time we pick up, and next time we talk, we'll also, the pitchers and catchers will already have reported. So we can start even talking about the ball hitting the glove and the bat hitting the ball and those type of things, and keeping track of time with the pitch count, which is how I keep track of time, is the count.
Just that thought melts the snow a little bit, doesn't it?
I want to. Yeah, it really does. My toes are curling and my feet are getting warmer as we speak. I want to thank Ralph Tyko, and I want to thank Gabe Schecter, and what a pleasure it's been to sit and warm up next to the hot stove with you guys today on the Comfortably Zoned Baseball Network.
Yeah, well, upstate New York, I'm warming up next to the floor heater.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing both of you guys again in real life or right here through the telephone. All right, and
sometime we're a nice, great dynamic.
You got it, and everybody, you've been listening to Charlie Vascellaro's Baseball Emporium on the Comfortably Zoned Baseball Network, and you can find us there and see when we'll be on the air again sometime soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, I think I ended the show. Is anybody still there?
Nope. I'm here. That was excellent. That was fun. Let's do it again.